Hello, everybody. Welcome to the dope recap and review of Loki. We are here and we are burdened with glorious purpose, and that is to talk about a fantastic show. And to join me on this journey, I have two reviewers that are going to be joining me. One of them could not be here for the first episode. He will be here next week, my friend David. But we also have, coming all the way from the UK, Crystal. Hello, how are you?
Hello, I'm all right. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. Excited to talk about this awesome episode. So right off the bat, what are your general impressions of Glorious Purpose, episode 1 of Loki?
Oh, I loved it. I've loved all of the new Marvel kind of series so far that have, you know, started recently, but I really loved this one the most. I was most intrigued by at the end of the episode. I just wanted to keep watching more and more and more. I thought there were some really great character moments for Loki, but also interesting character moments for this new Mobius guy that we just met. And just a really good, strong first episode that sets up for hopefully some really cool things to happen. That I mean, I have predictions, but we'll see if they come true or not.
Yes, I have a lot of predictions as well that I hope I'm hoping to see bear some interesting fruit just from what I've seen. So we're just going to kind of go through the beats of the story and then kind of talk about each beat separately. Starting off the opening sequence, we go back once again to 2012 to the Avengers Battle of New York. We see Loki's downfall. We get a couple new snippets of things just from his perspective, little close-up shots of Loki kind of reacting to things like Hulk trying to get in the elevator, things like that. Some that were freshly shot and intercut into the pre-existing footage from Avengers/Avengers Endgame. We see the whole sequence with him getting the Tesseract, disappearing. We see what happens immediately after that. He gets spit out in the Gobi Desert, I believe it was.
Mongolia, yeah.
Right, in Mongolia.
Yeah.
Crashes down in a visual very reminiscent of the first Iron Man film. See some people, starts doing his Loki thing. This is a Loki that is still villainous, evil, burdened with glorious purpose, monologuing Loki, not the Loki that we've seen evolve since then through his eventual demise in Endgame. This is a much younger, more evil, malicious Loki. We see that immediately get undercut by these chrono cops that show up, these Minutemen, and Loki starts going off on them and gets quickly put in this place and gets whacked in the face with a time baton that slows everything down for him to 1/16 normal speed when everything else around him is still moving in normal speed. Pretty awesome opening sequence. Crystal, what did you think about this opening?
The opening, first of all, I have to say, I love whenever we get a moment of Loki impersonating Cap, which happens very, very seldomly, but I love every time he does it. So when he like sits there and he's like, I'm gonna mock you now. I just love that they added that in. I like the little like recap to something that we're familiar with, a scene that we know, scene that most of us, love. And then just plonk right in the middle of the desert. And I like how we still have like young, hot-headed, arrogant Loki who's like, I'm going to monologue to these people who don't even know what I'm saying. And that like comic beat where he basically is like, I am Loki, like I am a god. And they're like, who are you? And he's like, I just said, and he has this kind of tone of like, did you not understand anything that I literally just said to you? And he gets interrupted. And then he gets this attitude adjustment so early on. That the opening sequence, I know at the end of it, I was like, well, that was a lot. That was a lot that happened in that short amount of time. The shot of his face just like flapping after he gets like whacked in the face with a baton was like great. And the little like the Minutemen, I think it was an interesting setup because they literally come out of nowhere. They're very officious. They don't really say what they're doing. They're just talking about variants and looking at their tech, and it really like provokes this curiosity. Because we haven't, we've seen a lot of things in the Marvel universe at this point, throughout all of the different films, and then you have WandaVision and Falcon and Winter Soldier. We've seen a lot of different stuff, so for something to be kind of new and fresh and kind of promote that curiosity, I think it was really, really well done. And then of course we have like the credit sequence, which I do want to comment on, felt very X-Files-ish for me, which I liked.
It's all the various
Yeah.
fonts. Yeah, that was interesting.
Yeah, I liked it a lot.
I would assume that's representative of the various, like, the multiverse, right? Different realities, different fonts and whatnot. I would also like to point out in that opening sequence, we also get to meet Hunter B-15, played by Wunmi Mosaku. Fantastic. I really, really like her. I really hope to see a lot more of her in the series. She's the one who whacks him in the face with the baton. Absolutely adored her throughout this entire episode. I love her no nonsense, like, I will kick your ass.
She was amazing. And I'm sorry, I just realized I mentioned the credits a little bit early. But again, it's a lot before we get there, but I just really wanted to say it before I forgot. But no, I loved her, and I love her in this entire episode. I think with the way that, like, she's pretty much the first one on the scene, the first one to deal with him, and the way that they're pitted against each other in this episode, I'm really fingers crossed, and fairly optimistic that she'll be featured quite heavily in the series.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm really, really hoping she is, because she was wonderful.
So after this sequence, we see Loki at the TVA. They take him into the TVA, and he goes through their intake procedure. So we see him. Let's see, where's he go first? I think he gets stripped down by the robot. We see him have to verify every word he's ever said, and then the scanner to confirm that he's not a robot. And these are just three just wonderful sequences. He also gets a rundown of what the TVA is, and like why they exist, and a little bit of the backstory. It's pretty much a huge exposition dump by an animated clock. It felt very reminiscent of Jurassic Park, with the info dump they do for Jurassic Park with the little animated thing, explaining how they. Right, the little DNA, the helix strand, like showing how like they got the blood of the dinosaurs from mosquitoes that were preserved in amber. It reminded me of that. But we get this whole backstory, and it's delivered wonderfully by Miss Minutes. This animated clock, who's voiced by Tara Strong, an amazing voice actress. We also get some hints of what is to come. They talk about, variants left unchecked can restart this multiversal war that happened long ago, that the timekeepers helped stop, and then created the sacred timeline. But every once in a while these variants happen, people discover time travel and start to break the timeline into a multiverse, and left unchecked it can lead to madness. They specifically say the word madness when talking about the multiverse, and how this can create a multiversal war. We have a movie coming out soon called Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness. Scarlet Witch, they talk about these variants being nexus events. Scarlet Witch is known as a nexus being. I think this is the MCU saying, like, here we are, stuff's about to get really crazy, strap the F in. What do you think of the sequence?
Yeah, absolutely. I'll get to the Nexus stuff in a second, but the sequence.
Let's start with the DMV. Yeah.
when he gets to the TVA and he's being processed, this is one of those sequences that it shows up in other pieces of film and TV where it's like, we have to change a character, we have to change somebody's personality like that. And so he's like, I'm hot-headed, this is fine as guardian leather, don't mess with me. And then it's just like 3 simple stages. And by the time we get down to the basement with the robot guy, he's like, do people really not know they're robots? And then he's like, I'm not a robot, so I'll be fine. And he goes to walk through it like he needs to assure himself. When up at the top of the chain, he's like, how dare you? Like, don't you know who I am?
Mm-hmm.
And just I like how it's like this 3 little simple steps to kind of altering his character from this hot-headed, arrogant, the jerk face we all know and love, quite frankly, into someone who's not quite so sure of himself. And I love the irritation build up in the second level with the paperwork where it's like, please sign that this is everything you've ever said. What? And another page prints and he puts it on top, and then he prints another page and puts it on top. I love the detail of the cat is just there on the floor. Like all these tiny little things that world build very, very quickly, and give like an avenue for Loki's attitude to change to what it needs to be by the end of the episode, also very, very quickly. So I really
keep him off balance. They keep him off balance like the entire time. Like this whole episode, he is off balance. He is completely broken down and unsure of himself. And they do it on so many different levels, both just like physical comfortability, emotional comfortability, like questioning the very meaning of his existence. Like it's a really interesting way to get him from the height of like villain stage Loki to post Endgame, or to like Ragnarok Endgame Loki, that has kind of become something more and realized that his purpose isn't to rule, and seemingly being okay with that, right? Like we have to get him from what he was to some facsimile of what he is as we know him now.
It works,
and I think
really
they do
well,
a really great job with it.
Yeah, they did a great job with it. And I think for me, the telling moment of that is right before he walks through the machine and he first laughs and he's like, do people normally not know they're robots? Like, that's absurd. And then he takes like a half a step forward and he just stops. And like, you can see the kind of concern on his face, because now we've gone from, I am a god, I'm burdened with glorious purpose, to, am I a robot? Because I'm not sure if I'm a robot. We've gone from like there to there in like, I don't know, 15, 20 seconds, really.
Yeah.
And it's good. I like it.
Yeah. And, this is fine as guardian leather. This is stuff that means something to him. Oh, we're just going to disintegrate it. Yeah. All right. Here's literally everything you ever said. You don't have any original thoughts. We have everything you've ever said in your life recorded. Write it down. Yeah. Or sign for it, please. Right. Drop him down again. He's just like, he's like getting so frustrated because he has no control, and Loki is a person that craves that control.
Well, and so especially when the little temporal like heat signature picture thing gets printed out, and he's like, what is that? And he's like, yeah, it's your temporal arc. Go. Like, right. You don't get to see it. You don't get to have anything to do with it. Like, step along. Like, get out of here.
And you and even like the Goldman Sachs kid, right, who's like being a little asshole the entire time, and then we see him just get completely disintegrated, right? And like because like, but like he even has hair similar to Loki's, right? Like he's being petulant how Loki has a tendency to be, and Loki's like, oh, okay, that's going to get me disintegrated. I need to adapt, so saying that I thought was very.
And when we get up to that stage, like the visual of the doors opening and then all the light bulbs in the ceiling, how unapologetically 70s this whole place is. I adore it. It looks the posters on the wall were one of the things that I noticed. I noticed like a lot of teeny tiny details. And so I loved the whole like behave or get your clock cleaned poster that's in the background with this minutes on it. And then the other one where it's like always watching and it's an eye. It's very reminiscent of, there was like a meme thing called Scarfoot that was about like a fake place in England. And it just had all these absurd yet spooky like posters. And it was all in a very 70s style. And so my friend and I were actually talking last night. We're like, this is very reminiscent of Scarfoot. And like eerily so. But it was just, I just love the whole like, take a ticket. Is this a deli? No. And he walks away, and then he gets, and I love how then he gets to the front and he does something that Loki would do. Would be like, well, I tried to take one and the guy wouldn't let me.
Yeah.
So of course I don't have one. And then they just disintegrate him. And watching that moment of panic where Loki just shoves his hands into his jumpsuit and is like rooting around
Right.
for this.
Where's my ticket? Where's my ticket? Where's my ticket?
He just is like,
yeah.
like watching him panic is just not something that we're used to seeing out of really most Marvel villains until it's like 2 minutes before they die.
Yeah.
Um,
So while Loki's going through the system, we cut to Agent Mobius. First time we see him, played by Owen Wilson. I love Owen Wilson's look in this. Absolutely love his look in this. I love the mustache. You know, the silver hair is working for him. I think he just looks awesome in this. He's investigating the death of a TVA squad. The Time Variance Authority, by the way, is what that means. In 1549 France. And he seems very confused by the case. He's trying to figure things out. He's talking with, with another hunter, and there is a young kid who he talks to, has a really heartwarming scene with the kid. And the kid points, he's like, who did this? And the kid points to a stained glass window with the visage of the devil. And this was hilarious because for people that were obsessing over every little Easter egg and detail in WandaVision, that were just looking around every corner waiting for Mephisto to show up, the internet immediately, like, Mephisto was trending on Friday because of this. Again,
I did not know that.
Yeah. Just to get that out of the way, the showrunner said this has nothing to do with Mephisto. That was because in spoilers for later on, that's supposed to be representative of Loki. We'll talk more about that later. More specifically about what that implication is, because that gets named later on in the episode. We'll wait till we get there. But what did you think about this first scene for Owen Wilson's Mobius?
Owen Wilson, I did not know could do a role like this, frankly. Most of the stuff I've seen him in, he's very, dopey. And he has these great sass moments. But this real, like, the heartwarming scene with the kid, I really liked. And it really sets his character apart from the other hunters, like, immediately. Because the other hunters are like, cool, yeah, we got the guy, let's go, and like and they're fairly brutal about it. But with this kid, he like makes a little cartoon walk, and then he's like, "Oh, your teeth are blue. Why are your teeth blue?" And he's like, "Oh, here's some."
And this is an anachronism, by the way. Yeah. The bubble gum in modern packaging looks like it's from like the 50s or 60s. It's called Kablooey. Makes your mouth blue. And he hands it to the Chrono Cop Minuteman hunter, and he's like, check it for temporal aura. He's like, we're not going to find anything. Saying that they found these anachronisms before, and for some reason they're untraceable. Very interesting.
It also had a kind of devilly looking face on the packaging, which I thought was interesting. I liked the stained glass detail, but that's because I like little visual stuff in the background like that all the time.
Well, you also, as a profession.
Yeah, right? That's my job as well.
Yeah. So tell people what you do.
I'm a church archaeologist. I actually specialize in historic graffiti, but I look at a lot of different art and architectural features in church buildings. So anytime there's a scene in a church, I'm like clued in right away.
Mm-hmm.
But I love the scene.
Yeah, no, it's a really great intro to Loki, sorry, to Mobius. We cut back to Loki. He is now on trial for his crimes. He's like, the judge, played by Gugu Mbatha Raw, says, are you guilty? He says, I'm guilty of being the god of mischief. I'm guilty for being annoyed with you. but I'm not guilty for any crimes against the sacred timeline. And he's blaming the Avengers. And they say what the Avengers did was supposed to happen, right? That one thing that Doctor Strange saw the way out was the sacred timeline, was what was supposed to happen. The only thing that deviated from what was supposed to happen was Loki getting hold of the Tesseract and escaping. That was the thing that was not expected. That's very interesting. That means that they did not break any super cosmic rules or anything like that, which I found very interesting.
I mean, like, I think the whole sacred timeline thing, to me at first, I was kind of like, this feels like a very nice loophole to just funnel into whatever's coming next without having to do too much like work. That was my first impression of it. By the end of the episode, my impression of that had changed. Because it was just like, oh well, we'll just blame it on there being only one thing not being, being able to exist or whatever. But that changed the trial. Like, he's back to the Loki you want to slap upside the head.
Right. Well, he's still trying to figure out a way to control the situation.
Yeah,
right.
He's
like he's still
throwing it.
Yeah, he's not completely broken down yet. Like, I think they made him uncomfortable enough to like accept the reality of this particular situation. But now he's like, okay, now how do I make this work for me?
Yeah, exactly. And I love how he starts to bargain. He does that bargaining thing where he's like, oh, it's the Avengers, but if you give me enough guys, I can go back and I can fix it all for you.
Right. But like none of his tricks are working.
They laugh at him. Great. They laugh at him.
Like he's like, okay, you know what? I'm done with this. I'm just going to try and kill everybody. And then he realizes his magic does not work. He does this great scene where it's like, all right, here's what I am guilty of this. And then nothing happens. Nothing. He can't summon his daggers. And then Hunter B-15, Wunmi Mosaka starts laughing. He's like, he's trying to use his powers, ma'am. And they're like, that doesn't work here. And he's getting so frustrated. He's like, he's like, this, you can't, what do you say? Like, this is my story. He says something to that effect. Like, this, you can't tell me what to do. This is my story, and they say, this is not your story, Mr. Laufey's son. It never was. Also, referring to him as Mr. Laufey's son, like, first of all, it's like a very, like, it felt very like Night Court, or like, like some sort of court, like dramedy type of thing. It's so weird to hear him refer to like that, but also the fact that he's not known any longer as Loki Odin's son. He's known now as Loki Laufey's son, because that's his actual dad.
He's always been Laufey's son, just nobody told him for a while, technically.
Yeah.
I love that moment because it takes away his title too. Like, it takes away the name that he's used to being called. It takes away, they're like, all right, Mr. God of Mischief. They're not doing that. It takes away everything that we know him as and he identifies as. And now he's that we know from the films, he's not that thrilled about being Laufey's son. We know this. So the fact that that's what he's being called, because that's what it says on the paperwork, I think is a nice touch. And it was one of those moments that made me kind of like the nerd me really happy. I was like, ooh, they're referring to him by his real dad.
Mm-hmm. This is when Mobius steps in as they rule him guilty and they're about to take him to be reset. He's like, hold on. I think I can use him to figure out this other thing. The judge instantly knows what he's talking about. He's like, that's not a good idea. This is not going to go the way you think it's going to go. He's like, no, it's going to work. Oh, it's going to work. Trust me. I'm Owen Wilson being adorable. And he's like, feel like I'm always looking up to you, and feels appropriate. He's doing his Owen Wilson thing, and it just like really works for this character. Cause like this guy is like unflappable. He's like super nice. Yes, I agree, Mike. Owen and Gugu are absolutely adorable, and I really want to see more of their relationship, whatever it is. It feels like there's something there. Like, maybe they used to be a thing, which also kind of leads to like this weird, like The Office type of feel that the TVA has. Like all this crazy stuff goes on, and they're just like these bureaucrats in the background pushing cosmic pieces around. but like for them, it's just like another day at the office.
I mean, there is that familiarity there that hints at like at least something. Like, at least they have had lunch or something at some point, just with the way he talks to her. But I mean, in that scene, what I love is when Loki's like, "Reset. What does that mean? Is it bad?" And like he's just he's so out of his element. Like he's tried everything, nothing's worked, and now he's been told that this.
I'm sorry. I need to pause. I need to pause 1 second. I need to pause our entire review talking about Loki because my mother said hello. Hi, Mom. She will not be ignored. Hello, Mother.
We will not ignore you. Hello.
So yeah. So we get to see now Mobius and Loki together, and Loki's like, I'm gonna burn this place to the ground. He's like, oh, you can start with my office. Like he just cannot be flapped, right? He's unflappable this entire time. We're not talking about a movie, Mom. We're talking about a Disney Plus show called Loki. So that's what we're talking about, Mama.
You should watch it.
You should really watch it. It's really good. It's on Disney Plus. And then he says he sees the place. And he's like, oh, I thought you said magic's not real. He's like, it's not. This is just what this is. And I don't know what movie your statement is from, Mom. Stop derailing my review. I love you.
She's your mom. She can do what she wants.
Yes, I know, right? I can't. Yeah, I can't. She does what she wants. I'm not in control. Mom is always in control. And he's like, oh, this is a nightmare. And he goes, oh no, that's a department I'll help you burn myself. So I love that. I love that. And just in general, like as we get into that whole back and forth between Loki and Mobius, whatever Loki says, Mobius is like, oh yeah, cool. He's like,
it's very like patting on the head, like patting a small child on the head. Cool, like, oh, okay, honey, like that kind of.
Did you read it like that? Because I felt like it maybe was
just like unimpressed.
Genuine. I felt like he was actually. He's like, no, I'm not making fun of you. I'm a fan. Like, I want to know what makes you tick. Like, seriously, like I want to know what's going on.
I got that later on in that vibe in the interrogation where he's like, I want to know you. But like when Loki, like in that initial meeting of Loki and Mobius, where Loki's like, what about this? What about this? And he's still trying to throw tricks because he has another person to try and influence.
Right.
I get this kind of like Owen Wilson, like, oh, okay, that's nice.
Like I feel like he knows it's not gonna work. Oh, right. It is Fatal Attraction. Yes, Mother. It is. I will not be ignored. It's from Fatal Attraction. I hope you're not saying we're in the Fatal Attraction situation because that's weird on so many levels, Mother. so many levels. Please don't Glenn Close me. Bye. I love you. I love you too, Mama.
Bye, Mom.
But yeah, Loki will say some long soliloquy thing, and he goes, "Oh, big metaphor guy," like, "Oh, yeah. Cool, like I dig it." He's just like, "Yeah, man, whatever you want to say, just like bring it on." You're not going to shake me, first of all. And like when Loki tries to like come at him, he uses the time turner to revert him back to his seat. Things like that. He's like, there is a limit where he's gonna put you back in your place. But besides that, he just wants to have a nice conversation. He's very much the good cop.
He's very much the good cop. And in that little like conversation scene, once stuff starts showing up on the screen is when the dynamic changes.
Right. And this, I think, gets to the core and back to what we were saying about the opening sequence, about breaking him down. This is when we really start to see that. Let's really start to peel back the layers of who Loki is as a character. And it's a wonderful device. That in a tight hour, 52 minutes or whatever, takes Loki on this journey from where he was back in 2012 to where he is as we know him when we saw him die.
Yeah.
Right. I thought that was brilliant, right? We're seeing all of his greatest failures, like just on a screen, already recorded, just a point of fact. And he starts seeing things that haven't even happened to him yet. He sees what happens to his mother, and then he sees that like he told told the Dark Elves which way to go, and that resulted in his mother Frigga's death.
And he
the
didn't
only person
know
that he really like openly cared for, like, you know, even when he tried to lie to her, because we see that scene where he's like, you know, where he's basically like, "You're not my mom," you know, and she's like, and she like clearly she knows like he's full of shit, because like this is obviously like her favorite kid, like, you know, she loves both of her kids, I'm sure, but like this is the kid that got into magic like her, you know, obviously like this is the kid she has a special connection with. And as we see in Thor: The Dark World, right after she dies, when Thor goes to confront Loki, and then he finally lets down the facade, and we see he's wrecked his cell, and he is a freaking mess, right? So he's experiencing all this in real time, and like maybe an hour or two after he just got handed the biggest smackdown of his life up to that point. You know, because like
he almost killed, which he was
right,
informed that he was almost terminated, you know, like,
you know, Hulk slapped him around, you know, Avengers beat him. He's, you know,
not his day.
almost reset. And now he's saying that like also you eventually are the reason your mother gets murdered. And then
there's even more later that
and there's even more later, but I think the capstone on this part of the sequence is when Owen Wilson's character, when Mobius says to him, you were not meant to lead, you were meant to cause pain and suffering in other people's lives so that they could become the best versions of themselves.
Yeah, that was like such a heavy hitting moment, especially because like so much of this sequence, you know, Mobius is asking Loki, like, but you like this, don't you like this? This is what you like, that sort of thing, just kind of like leading him, pushing him to just admit these like sadistic tendencies. And then, you know, Loki loses it and is like, no, I'm supposed to be king. I don't, you know, when Loki breaks down and he's like, does he have the big breakdown?
That's later.
That's later, right? Yeah, but then he
says the same thing here,
yes,
but in a different way. He says, because
like,
it's all an illusion.
You
know, this is an illusion. This is for the weak to try and exert control. Yeah. Right. And he says it about the TVA. Yeah. And he's, you know, I refuse to accept this, you know. Right. It's an amazing this entire episode is just such an amazing character study. Yeah. Mike said the best encapsulation of Loki I've ever heard. 100% agree. I think it's genius the way they kind of break Loki's character down in this and kind of like lay it all out there. Like, this is the Loki that we know. He throws a chair in anger, comes at Mobius again. Mobius reverts him back again, but the chair doesn't reset, so he finds himself on the ground. When and then Mobius helps him up, and then he gets called away because Hunter B-15 really wants to reset Loki. He's like, what are you doing? Let me reset this guy.
She's 100% done with him.
Yeah. And then when Owen Wilson comes back, Loki is gone. Loki has stolen the time turner out of his pocket, and just kind of chuckles and goes, mischievous scamp, you know, which is something that Loki called himself earlier in the episode. So yeah, just in general, this entire sequence, this entire back and forth, this first half of it is flipping awesome.
Yeah, it's moving. I love what comes next, though. Like, I love the little stuff in the next sequence.
So right after that, we see Loki outside of the room. He runs back into the guy that so when they first intake him there, what was his name? Was it Glenn?
I think it's Glenn. Yeah. See, I recognize that character from The Good Place. So when I see him, all I think is Pillboy, but I know it's not Pillboy. That's all I think.
Yeah, he was also in Kong Skull Island with Tom Hiddleston.
Yeah, and he was also in Mandalorian as well.
And he was in The Mandalorian. Yep. Disney loves to like once you're in the Disney ecosystem, it was like, okay, you're going to be in a Marvel thing, you're going to be in a Star Wars thing, you're going to be in a Pixar thing, you're going to be in a Disney thing. So
yeah, no, he was. I loved the little guy in this. this
Yeah.
episode. I love him. He's amazing.
The 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 encounter with Glenn is interesting because he's like, Glenn, help me out or I'm gonna murder you, la 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 la. And I'm gonna turn you into a fish. And he's just like, what's a fish? He's like, how do you not know what a fish is? He's like, I've lived my entire life behind a desk. And
he's like, why would I know what a fish is?
yeah,
like,
and he's just like, well, like, he's like, well, explain to me what you're gonna do to me because I want to know like what I'm being threatened with before I you say whether or not I'm going to comply. And so he's just like, I'm going to murder you, Glenn. Like, it's gonna be horrible, painful murder. And he's like, all right, I comply. He's like, where's the Tesseract? And he's just like, it's right here in my cart. And then opens up, here it is. And then Loki looks in there, grabs the Tesseract, and then realizes there is like a whole heap of Infinity Stones.
There's like duplicates of the Infinity
There's
Stones.
like a bunch of time stones. There's a bunch of power stones. There's like every stone. The only stone I did not see represented was the Mind Stone. I didn't see any Mind Stones in there. Those are yellow. There was orange. There was, red. There was. I saw pretty much everything else except for the yellow Mind Stone. I don't know if that means anything or not. And then he's like, "Where did you get all these?" He's like, "Oh, we actually get these all the time, And he's like over there using them as paperweights, just which is amazing because we have built up 20-something movies in service of the Infinity Saga. And to just depower them in that way, saying like, "Oh, that don't mean anything here."
Yeah,
like even further knocking him off course.
That was honestly one of my favorite moments in this entire episode.
So what did you think about that moment?
I loved it. I thought it was super creative. I liked that it was a nod to the Infinity Saga, especially because the Tesseract obviously had to come into play with where we enter this episode from. But
Casey, thank you, Casey, not Glenn.
Casey. Oh, Casey. Okay, not Glenn.
No, you know what? Glenn is the douchebag pencil pusher from the bad place and the good place.
Oh yeah, that Glenn who wants to bite.
He's always like getting zipped up by
Yes, and he gets turned into goo.
Or not the judge, by Sean. By Sean, yes.
He pretends to be the judge.
Yes.
Anyway, that moment, I loved it. I loved how it was like a nod to the Infinity Saga. But also it shifts our kind of point of reference as viewers, because again, we've had how many movies being like, oh, the Infinity Stones, the Infinity Stones, the Infinity Saga, and then we finally get to Infinity War and Endgame, and it's like super powerful. Oh my god, like they bend time just to go back and undo the damage this thing did. And then it's just, there's a whole bunch of them in a drawer as paperweights. And one of the things that I liked about that is just, for me anyway, and this is probably a little deep, as humans, it's like we're always focused on our own little thing and our own little world and everything like that. And like what we think is super important, like personally, is always something that like we focus on, like laser focus. And what this just kind of was like everyone was so focused on the Infinity Stones and they were super, super important, and they didn't realize that there might be something beyond that. There might be something beyond that scope of that story and beyond that scope of power, something even bigger, something quite frankly a little bit scarier, because I don't know about you, Miss Minutes scares the crap out of me. She's so creepy.
I love Miss Minutes.
So creepy. I can't stand
the other interesting thing it does, though, is that it shows, like, just like Loki's power doesn't work here, like nothing about his universe holds any control over this place, right? Those Infinity Stones are just paperweights here. Like, they're completely useless. He tries to use the Tesseract. It does absolutely nothing. It's just a pretty shiny rock.
It means for us as viewers, too, that like nothing that we know necessarily holds true either about his powers or what he's capable of or what can be done and conducted in this space. Like, there's new rules for us, too, that we get to learn with him, which I think is kind of cool.
B-15 comes in, tries to just prune this Loki. with her baton, and then ends up destroying the cart. And by the way, all the Infinity Stones within that cart, just destroyed like universal power, like many times over with just a wave of baton. He gets away. We see him go back to the room. He watches the rest of the film.
Oh my God, this scene.
He sees it, goes back to see his conversation with his mom. Then fast forward, sees the death of his father, of his adopted father, Odin. We see him having his really heartfelt conversation with his brother and being there for his brother. So he sees all these people who he said betrayed him and denied him his birthright, just embracing him and loving him unconditionally, right? Completely antithetical to everything that he says, right? This complete opposite of what he says is happens to him. We see them loving him. And then the person who he was working for, Thanos, he gets to watch Thanos snap his neck. The person that he put his trust in then murders him in Defile. And this is right after, once again, like I want to reiterate that this is a character that from our point of view has only experienced events up to the Avengers. So this is a completely different Loki than what we knew in Thor: The Dark World, in Ragnarok, and in Endgame. In Infinity War, right? Completely different. This is way before that, and we see that this is the end of the facade, and he's just broken at this point. B-15 comes in. He does the time turner thing, which is really funny, but ultimately fairly inconsequential to the story. It's just like one more little funny beat. More importantly, after that, when Mobius comes in and he asks him again, why do you enjoy hurting people? Right. And then Loki comes completely honest, but he says basically the same thing he said earlier. Before he says the thing he said earlier, he says, I don't enjoy hurting people. I don't enjoy it. He says, I'll quote it here. I do it because I have to, because I've had to. And then he says what he said earlier in the episode, but instead of talking about the TVA, now he's talking about himself, because it's part of the illusion. It's the cruel, elaborate trick conjured by the weak to inspire fear. He calls himself weak. He's completely broken down in this moment. And that is the brilliance of this episode, that in an hour, it takes him on this journey of self-discovery, and completely breaks him down so he can be built up to something else.
I love I know I keep saying that I loved everything about this episode, but I really pretty much did. And the sequence, watching him react to watching Odin say, I love you, my sons, and how he looks almost about that. Watching him with the scene where Thor from Ragnarok, where they're having that touching brother moment. Mm-hmm. They're talking about how, basically how he views Loki now. And then the shift that you get to when Thanos pretty much murders him. And there's two things that struck me about the scene. Obviously, one is what we're talking about, how it breaks him down, how it's, this is a character this isn't the Loki that we know that has already gone through those things. This is pre all that, and he's getting hit hard, right now, hit after hit after hit after hit after hit. But the other thing that struck me was that, we have this conversation with Mobius that takes place once he comes back, right? Mm-hmm. And Mobius is this is the only timeline that can exist. This is the timeline. This is the only truth, this, kind of thing. And to be basically told that your only timeline, the only timeline that you are allowed to have, is where you are brutally murdered by the one person that you trusted, after not realizing that all the other people that you turned your back on really loved you. Mm-hmm. and he hasn't hit that maturity yet. He hasn't hit those points yet in the story, like we know, like you've reminded us. And that just like cuts him deep. Like this is because he keeps saying things like throughout many of these meetings, like, well, I write my own story sort of thing, or I choose my fate. And it's like, no, the only fate you're allowed to have is where you are basically murdered and then cast aside like a piece of trash by the only individual that at this point in his timeline he really trusts. And that, like, I think that was one of the things that struck me as kind of moving.
Yeah. And then, so right after that, right, and Mobius says, look, man, I can't offer you redemption. Like, that's not what this is. Like, but like, maybe I can help you out a little bit, though. It's he's like, you want to get out of here, right? Well, why don't you help me? With this thing, we got this, this variant we're going after. I think you can help me. He says, well, why me? Like, at this point, like, Loki's like, you just spent all this time telling me I don't matter. Why do I matter in this situation? He says, well, because the variant we're hunting is you, right? It's like another Loki. And then we get this beautiful sequence where we cut to Salina, Oklahoma, and like the 1800s, like 1850 something.
1858.
1858. And I think it's the same TVA squad that was in France. The voice of the hunter in that squad sounded like the hunter in the France scene. And they're like, oh, probably some time traveler trying to get rich. Let's just reset and get out of here. It's not worth the paperwork. Whatever, big deal. And then they're like, wait, who's that? And we see a hooded figure that sets this field on fire and burns all of them to death. Very interesting. And that's the episode.
Oh no. The
That's
most interesting part of that for me is when the hooded figure picks up the charge that they were going to use to reset and picks it up and walks away with it. That's the most interesting part for me.
So that's not the most interesting part for me, because like here's the most interesting part for me. We've been told that it's Loki.
Right.
So why keep the figure hooded in that moment?
That is, there's a lot of predictions about it being like Lady Loki, I think.
And I'm wondering if that's where they're going, because they also made a big point right before the show came out of saying like Loki's gender fluid, Loki's a shapeshifter.
It's on his paperwork.
It's on his paperwork. So is this variant presenting female? And are we doing Lady Loki? I think that's super, super interesting.
I'm kind of fingers crossed that we are, because that would be awesome.
Same. I really hope that is what we see happen as we progress into this show. I'm hoping that we don't wait until this is only 6 episodes. I'm hoping we don't wait until like episode 5 or 6 to reveal who the villain is. I'm kind of sick of that happened in WandaVision. It happened it kind of happened to Falcon and the Winter Soldier, with the power broker. Like, let's just hold it over everybody's head until the very, very end. I don't want that. Just define.
I'm kind of thinking do it in like the next episode almost, so we can build the kind of tension between whoever it is they're chasing in reality and Loki.
Right. Just give me a defined protagonist and a defined antagonist and have them go at each other. I don't want to have to wait the entire show to see who the antagonist actually is. Marvel has historically, and I feel like they still are having this problem, have a problem creating for me compelling villains. Very few exceptions, Loki being one of those exceptions. So I would be very disappointed in the show with one of the only examples for me of a really strong villain character in the MCU if I don't actually get a strong villain character in his show.
Yeah. I'm kind of hoping that as well, like if they do the reveal early, because Loki is also clever enough and interesting enough as a character that like you can carry on, like you can do this like cat and mouse thing for a while and do it in so many different ways and have it still be interesting. One thing that we did not touch on that I just want to throw
DB
in that
Cooper.
I appreciate it. Yeah, Stevie
Yeah,
Cooper.
I
Loki
just
DB
realized we
Cooper.
completely glossed over that. Go ahead, take it. Describe the DB Cooper scene.
Oh my God, he's on the plane and you know the airline like hostess lady brings him a drink and you know he says thank you and hands her a little note and she walks away and he's like, you might want to read that note. You know, I have a bomb, and he's got his hair all slicked back and he looked great. Um and the whole point of it was he was DB Cooper because he lost a bet to Thor. And he, you know, jumps out of the plane, leaves the money, and then just has Heimdall bringing up through the Bifrost. And I think it's great. I love it. I think it's so clever. I love all those like little unsolved mystery things. Like normally, like all that little, like cryptids and Fortiana and stuff like that. I love all those little mysterious things. So the fact that they were like, well, we'll just make Loki DB Cooper because that checks out. Oh, it was such a great moment.
So yeah, so that's the show. And by the way, just real quick, I want to make sure people know. So this show, Loki, was created by Michael Waldron, and it is being directed in its entirety by Kate Herron. So those are the two kind of like creative visions behind the show. The music, which I think is fantastic, a lot of like theremin work, is done by Natalie Holt. And yeah, like we said, really awesome cast thus far. Tom Hiddleston, Gugu Mbatha-Raw, Wunmi Mosaku, Eugene Cordero, Tara Strong, and Owen Wilson. Thus far, I'm wondering if we get like secretly we didn't realize that like there was like a really big name that was brought in to play Lady Loki. Like fingers crossed for like Phoebe Waller-Bridge or something like that. You know, like right. Like I can't wait to see who they have for that character. Had they not cast her already in She-Hulk, I would have said the Orphan Black Lady, Tatiana Maslany would have been a wonderful Lady Loki, but like I know already that she's going to be She-Hulk. You know, so I was thinking, oh, maybe like a Phoebe Waller-Bridge could be really good person to play that role.
Yeah, going to add on what you said about the music. I am mildly obsessed with the music from this series already. I love theremin. When I started hearing it, I was like, oh, a soundtrack for me. I was very excited. And it just kind of fits, and it's got this very like retro sci-fi. It adds to the retro sci-fi feel of it.
Absolutely.
And I cannot get over how everything is that unapologetic orange everywhere. That 70s orange with the wood paneling everywhere. I'm very curious to see more about the timekeepers in the future, and I hope that we get there quickly too. Like maybe the third or fourth episode, I would like to see some of that, because the little animation thing where Miss Minutes is explaining like who they are and like the previous war, and then like their heads are cut out in like the courtroom, and their images kind of keep just showing up randomly here and there and everywhere, and it's no one that like at least I recognize like off the bat. Like I'm not like, oh, that's that's so and so. It's not like it's like Thanos or something. But I'm just really curious if we're going to get more of that here in the series, or if the series is going to lead up to that and then that's left for multiverse. Because this is pretty much from a lot of the stuff that I've read, this is like the one series that they're saying is important to watch before we hit up the next like batch of films.
Yeah, Feige has said that this is probably going to have the biggest impact on all of that. So, and I mean, if you're also saying in your first episode, that left unchecked, this could lead to madness, in a multiverse, right? We're saying like the words like literally in the title of Doctor Strange, right? But it also got me thinking, and so before we go into our final thoughts and what we rate the episode, it made me go down a speculation rabbit hole, and who knows if it happens or not. If it happens, cool. If it doesn't, cool. I don't care. But my nerd brain went down a rabbit hole. everybody keeps saying, oh, like, you know, uh, Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield, you know, they're gonna reprise the roles as Spider-Man. And I'm thinking, okay, well, what if they are doing that, and the reason they're saying they're not doing it for Spider-Man Far From Home is because they're not doing it for Spider-Man Far From Home. The next Doctor Strange movie is being directed by Sam Raimi, who directed the original
Right.
Spider-Man trilogy. So, you know, what if they are coming back, but it's going to be in Multiverse of Madness, and we're going to see, you know, characters from throughout not just the MCU, but just Marvel production history, right? Like, we could have a lot of fun with that.
We could
They
have
could bring back.
We could have Spider-Ham back.
You could have Spider-Man, yeah, or you could connect to Into the Spider-Verse. You could connect to like the '80s Captain America like TV movie. You could connect to the Roger Corman Fantastic Four. Like, you could do anything. Now, I doubt that's going to happen, but you do, you know, when you say like multiverse in a world with infinite possibilities, all of these things theoretically exist somewhere. Right.
See,
Once the sacred timeline starts to break down, you quickly go from 0 to infinite. Right. Yeah. If you have branches upon branches upon branches, and those are all left unchecked, if there's no TVA there to keep those branches from deviating, you very quickly get from 0 to infinity. It's also it's not linear, right? They're hopping back and forth through all sorts of time periods. If they're no longer there to stop those things from happening, then that's very quickly going to just make a very, very different multiverse. You know, so I just wanted to throw that out there. There's a wild nerd speculation that
we'll find out soon enough.
Maybe that's happening. So, all right, Crystal, your final thoughts on this episode, and what do you rate it out of 5?
Out of 5, I'd say it's like a 4. This is like a 4 out of 5 for me. It's very, very strong. It's not perfect, but it's quite strong. And as far as first episodes go, like first episodes traditionally are a little bit slower and have a little bit more of the background, like expose sort of stuff, info dump. But I think that they handled it really well, and it was really enjoyable to watch. Once I finished it, I wanted to watch it immediately over again to try and find stuff, because, you know, as Marvel nerds, we're all trained to look for Easter eggs and stuff in the background and little tiny details and listen for things. So I did. I rewatched it the next day. I thought it was so good. The character moments with Loki were just phenomenal, where especially once he states out loud, that he is weak. And that his whole thing is just an illusion. I thought that was just that was a 10 out of 10 moment for me. After he had gone and retrieved the Tesseract and realized that it was basically just a useless trinket here. Really, really looking forward to seeing where it's going. I've got a lot of questions and a lot of predictions, but I'm really looking. I kind of want to be proved wrong, because I really want Marvel to surprise me. And I'm just really looking forward to what happens next, and I kind of can't wait for next Wednesday already.
We're about to hit an hour, so I want you to do it real fast, but I want to hear, just give me give me one of your predictions, like something you think that could potentially happen through the course of this show.
Crap, now that you've put me on the spot with a time limit, I can't remember one. Obviously Lady Loki is like my biggest prediction, and that's like a lot of other people's shared prediction. Also I kind of have a prediction that like Mobius already knows exactly every single thing that is going on, and already knows that this is not the same Loki, and is fully aware of the situation, and is almost setting it up so they destroy each other.
Okay. All righty.
Because he's good copping so hard.
Yeah, I like that. So my prediction, so I'll give you one more quick prediction. I think that we're going to lead into Kang the Conqueror, who is from the Third Millennium, because they mentioned at the end, like, oh, this is a piece of Third Millennium tech. So I'm thinking that could be something there. And he has a history with that Judge character played by Gugu Mbatha Raw as well. Judge Ravonna has history with her. So potentially maybe we could get some Kang early in this, who's already been cast. Kang has been cast. Jonathan Majors, who played the main character on Lovecraft Country, is playing Kang in the MCU. So that could potentially happen. In terms of my rating for this episode, I thought it was the strongest of the 3 Disney Plus series in terms of like an opening episode. I thought this was the strongest. I'm going to give it a solid 4.5 out of 5. I really don't have much to say, say that was like wrong with this episode. If anything, I think it is a damn fine episode. To start us off, a really great hour of TV. I could just watch this as a standalone and just be happy. But I'm really excited to see where we go in the next 5 episodes, because I feel that both Falcon and the Winter Soldier and WandaVision have trouble sticking their landings, not to the point that they ruin the shows, but it's like, oh, that's a shaky landing. I've had many issues with the WandaVision finale, and I actually have a lot of issues with the Falcon and Winter Soldier finale. And so I'm very interested to see how well they can stick the landing, because I have no doubt that they're going to take us on a really exciting ride. But how they stick that landing, I think, will separate this from the other two, or not. So we shall see. But I want to thank everybody for tuning in and listening. Thanks so much, Mike, for your kind words. We will next week, and from here on out, we will have these on Wednesdays, hopefully, for everybody. So be sure to tune in next Wednesday after you watch the episode. Tune in with us that evening to hear our review of Loki episode 2. Like I said, next week we will have the final member of our review team, David, on, and I'm very excited about that. Also looking to do a review of In the Heights in the next few days as well. David and I will be reviewing that soon, hopefully. Hopefully by the end of this weekend, if not early next week. Super excited to watch it. I've watched the opening 8 minutes like 5 times, and I start crying too much. And I'm like, okay, I got to get my spirit ready to just absorb all of this goodness. So yeah. Crystal, thank you so much for reviewing with us. You have anything coming up that you want to plug?
Nope, nothing in the next week. No.
All right.
But thank you for having me.
No, thank you for being on. Be sure to be on the lookout for information should be dropping on Monday for ticket information for the launch party for the book that I just wrote. Hi, I'm Ella. It's a children's book for children of all identities, and I'm really proud of it, and I can't wait to get it in people's hands. So be sure to be on the lookout for that. It'll be happening at Fitzgerald's on the 17th of July. That's about it. Thanks, everybody. Bye.